Hi, welcome to another MyHana course. We're going to discuss the IEP process. Doo, doo, doo. Well, it can seem like that, but we're going to get through this together. I'm Sandra Alexander, speech therapist, and I've been a speech therapist in the schools as well. So I've participated in the IEPs and helped run them, and participated from a parent angle too because of my child having autism. So let's get started. Now, remembering what an IEP is, it's an individualized education plan. It is a legal binding document, and it's part of IDEA. So let's learn more about this. Parents of children with special needs get IEPs if the school or you notice that, hey, I think we need help, okay? So it's a system that you need to learn to navigate through the public schools. And you can do this very early, even before kindergarten, get an IEP during early intervention. So you'd register for the child for school, and you can even ask for an evaluation then. So the IEP, or individualized education plan, describes in detail the program that's going to help your child do better in school, and it's created for the unique needs of your child. Now, IDEA is the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, which was enacted in 1975. Basically, this law requires that public schools provide a free and appropriate education for children with disabilities. Public schools are required to find and evaluate students suspected of having disabilities at no cost to the families. So let's talk about the IEP team members. There's normally at least 5, okay? But you're the most important. Please keep that in mind. You know your child the best, so be there to advocate for them. But the members are at least 5, and they're essential to the team. And they're there to help make sure that your child gets the appropriate services to do well in school. You're critical, so please, like I said before, advocate. The general education teacher is a member, and they'll talk about the general curriculum, how your child's doing, what they may be trying to do already to support, and what's working and what's not. They may already be saying, oh, let's put them in a different seat, so maybe they'll see me better or listen better, that kind of thing. There'll be a special education teacher that can advise on how to modify the curricula to meet the needs of your student. And what other supplementary aids might help that can assist with that. There should be a qualified professional who can explain the results of evaluation. So that could be speech therapist talking about the results of their evaluation, occupational therapy, a school psychologist. They do the testing, and they'll talk about how your child did. And if they're already doing services, they'll talk about how they're doing on their goals and explain what's going and what's working, what's not. And also, there should be a professional that represents the school district, as they say, an administrator. That could be the principal, who's knowledgeable about, obviously, the school and educational services and how to educate students with special need, but also authority to commit district resources for your student. So here they are in writing. I did experience a couple meetings where it was hard to get the district representative there because of scheduling. Just be aware that that person should be there, okay? Because they have to sign the IEP as well. You should make sure everybody is available to the best of your ability. So how is eligibility determined for an IEP? So there are steps involved. So first, the parent and or the school say, hey, we got a problem. Now, normally what happens with that, they'll notice it, and they'll either, the school might talk to you or you'll talk to them. If you're wanting a service like speech therapy because you know you've got a problem, put your request in writing. If it's in writing, they have to operate on it, do something. If it's verbal, they may forget, so because they're busy. So make sure you put things in writing. That will help you. So if you and or the teacher notices the child's having a problem and not progressing, they'll have an IEP meet. They'll have a meeting just to determine whether or not they should evaluate your student. And if that happens and they say, okay, we want to conduct an evaluation, you're going to get something in writing that says, we want to evaluate your student, okay? And they're going to say that we want to do that, and you need to give them permission to do that. They normally just don't do these kind of evaluations without you knowing or giving your permission. Make sure you do that. The specific evaluations to make up a multidisciplinary team can be from the school psychologist, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical education, medical. So there could be a lot of things going on. So it's not necessarily a fast process. And there are timelines that everybody operates within. That will vary a little bit with state to state, but check with your school. So the IDEA, which we just discussed, which is a law that the schools have to provide free and appropriate education, outlines 14 disability categories, and your child would have to fall into one or more to be able to get an IEP. Those categories would be things like autism or deafness, traumatic brain injury, intellectual disabilities, that kind of thing. If they're not quite in any of those categories, they might not get an IEP. There might be a different kind of plan for that. But what happens is there'll be a formal meeting that's held with the IEP team presenting to you, the parent, the results of evaluations once the evaluations happen, okay? And if the eligibility requirements are met, the parent agrees, signs the documents, because you have to sign, and then you'll sign, this is signing just the eligibility document, okay? It's an eligibility document, and the development of the IEP begins, okay? So here are the components of an IEP. You'll have basic student information. There'll be present levels of performance. That includes your concerns as well. Please bring them up. Annual goals and objectives, special education and related services, participation with non-disabled peers, statement of transition services, and progress reporting. So basic information contains not only details regarding the student, but also the school, the IEP implementation, the date, evaluation dates. Present level of performances is a narrative. It's not scores. It's written by the student teacher. It can be written by therapists. This is how they're doing right now, and all the behavior, communication, etc. If you have a concern as a parent, please voice it. I remember when I worked in the schools, just as an aside, I always preferred to work with parents who were voicing concerns, because they cared enough to do that. I knew their student was going to get more help because they cared. They'd carry over at home. So you want to carry over at home, and I'd rather work with somebody, please let us know. That's how I was like, we can't solve anything if we don't know there's concern. So there you go there. So please voice your concerns. Annual goals and objections include all academic and functional goals that the IEP team feel is appropriate and that you feel is inappropriate. So each goal will have objectives that break down the goal into specific areas step by step, so the student can get the appropriate help they need to progress. Special education and related services need to be described specifically and included therapies like speech therapy and occupational therapy, physical therapy. And the specifics would be speech therapy, let's say one time a week for 45 minutes or twice a week for 30 minutes each, for example. Whether they're done individually or in group, in or out of the classroom. Things like whether your child will have an aide or a paraprofessional. There's supplementary aids that can be part of the IEP, other services, accommodations, and modifications that are implemented by the teacher. Like the teacher might only require 50% of homework get done, or they might be giving your child a different level of math than the rest of the room because that's where your child's at, for example. Preferential seating arrangements or desks, times for assignments, that kind of thing. Those are all components that need to be written into your IEP. So what are the placement options? The least restrictive environment. Now, IDEA mandates that a student with a disability should be educated to the maximum extent possible with non-disabled peers. That's what is meant by least restrictive, but least restrictive with non-disabled peers isn't always the optimal for students. Sometimes being in a regular ed classroom is much more challenging and places more barriers to learning. And so that might not be the least restrictive for your child. Please keep that in mind. A child with a disability can have their needs met in general education with supplementary aid and services, direct, indirect instruction, seating changes, things that we've mentioned before. They could be in a special education class where all the students are on an IEP and are getting services. Now, if an IEP decides that a student's educational needs can't be met in this way, they may need to go to a special education school, and that's a different school. It may not be in the same district. It could be a private school. So that all the testing and everything else would be tried first, and then, okay, this isn't working, would go to a different school. And so that could be a treatment option. Now, placement at home or hospital, public or private institutions are considered most restrictive to educational environments. Normally, if a child's being educated in this way, there's other serious issues. They could be receiving medical treatment for cancer and they just can't go to school for their health, for example. It could be in the hospital, could be a private institution. Whoops, excuse me a minute here. I skipped a little. So let's talk about what to accept or what to expect from an IEP meeting. So the IEP meeting attends. The first IEP meeting, the IEP is drafted or presented as a draft, and then changes can be made. Normally, IEP meetings occur annually, but if you need to meet more often, you can request that. They need to provide a translator. The evaluation results are presented, presentation of the IEP, and then a parent would agree and sign it. So let's talk about this a little more in depth. The IEP meeting, the team is required to attend the meeting. Additional people may be asked to attend that meeting by the team leader or by the parent. So, for example, the team leader may ask a school principal to attend to provide information about the school culture. Parent might ask an advocate to attend to help the parent understand what's being presented or to make sure that their needs are being attended to, so to speak. Now, at the first or initial IEP meeting, it has to be held within 30 calendar days after the student has been determined to be eligible to have an IEP for special education. Now, if they can't do it in 30 days, normally the school will say, can we have more time? And you would sign an extension. That should be presented to you, just to let you know. The IEP is presented as a draft at the meeting because changes can be made, okay? And you do it during discussions. IEP meetings are required once a year, but you can do them more often if you need to. The IEP team might request another meeting, and you certainly can. And if you need to, please do. If the IEP meeting is the first for the student or after reevaluation year, the results of the multidisciplinary team are presented and are discussed at the meeting. Now, after all those presentations and discussions regarding the draft IEP, the team leader will ask the parent to sign it. Now, don't sign it if you're not in agreement, or if you want to read it first, say, I want to read it first and then sign it. Please do that, okay? It is a binding document. So you don't have to do it then and there, okay? So what are the rights of the parents? You have rights, and so does your students. Now, oftentimes in a meeting, because I've been in meetings, sometimes they're presented very quickly or in tiny print on the back of the document. Your rights should be discussed with you. Try to get a hold of them prior to the meeting, or if you need a little extra time, make sure that you know your rights, okay? Because there are safeguards to make sure that your child gets what they need done. So to ensure the rights of the parent and their child with a disability are protected, including how to resolve disputes. IDEA outlines procedures, okay? And these are procedural safeguards, okay? The overarching right that is protected and is in the essence of IDEA is the provision of free and appropriate public education for children with disabilities. So that's the notice I talked about. You should see your rights, okay? You have to be given those rights in writing at least once a year, okay? Not only do you have a right to participate in the meetings about your kid or your child, excuse me, you can reach out, you can request this meeting at any time. You can request another meeting. You could say, look, I want to review my rights. And if you need more time to do that, say so, okay? You can review them. Parents can ask and have the right to review any school records and ask for corrections. Schools have to keep all this information confidential, okay? All personal information. Prior to the school conducting any initial or reevaluation or providing special education services through an initial IEP, a request for parent permission must be given in writing. They can't just say, we're going to do this testing and give you results. They have to give, you will know. You should know. This should never be a surprise to you. They have to request your permission, okay? What are the more rights? Because there are more. The parent must receive prior to written notice of changes made to the IEP. The IEP meeting must be conducted in a language everybody understands, and if not, an interpreter needs to be there, okay? Parents can request independent educational evaluation or a stay put order or mediation. So prior to any changes being made, we talked about it, you'll get a written notice. You have to understand the notice. It must be presented in a way, in language that you understand. If you don't understand something presented to you by the school, please ask, okay? You have a right to understand, okay? If the parent is not in agreement, if you don't agree with any of the findings or what the school wants to do, obviously first say so. And then the school can get a qualified evaluator that's selected by you from an approved list of evaluators. And that's called an independent educational evaluation. And so it's like, well, somebody else do this, and let's see if they get the same results. Now, the results might not be accepted by the school, but they need to let you have that. If the parent is still in disagreement with the proposed changes to the IEP, that is a dispute, and you can't resolve it, let's say during the meeting, then the parent can request something called a stay put order. This keeps the current IEP in place so your child gets services that they already have while you're trying to solve the dispute, okay? You can request mediation, and that involves a neutral third party who would come to the meeting and work with the family, you, and the school to try to get through the obstacle. Now, you may have heard something called due process, which is a legal process during which a hearing officer is presented with evidence from both the school district and the parent and renders a binding decision on the IEP. If a parent is not in agreement, if you still don't like what's going on with the outcome of due process, you can file a formal complaint with the State Department of Education. It's a serious legal step, and you'll probably have to hire a lawyer. So hopefully you don't have to go that far. Hopefully everything can be worked out, because that's more stress. So for more information about the IEP, you can go to www.2.ed.gov/parents/needs/IEP guide/index.html. Thank you for listening to this MyHana presentation. Go out there and get good education for your child. Remember, you're the #1 advocate. Thank you.